Greg,
Yes,
lack
they
of
really are.
tunes. Basically, you have IPD or Hilton for tuning, but Stevo's gone. Contrast is gone. Big drama around the S60RR, which I'm sure you can shed more light on. Nobody in the community is tuning anymore. Your thoughts as Mr. Volvo 2022?
Mr. Volvo. Oh God, that's a very lofty title you've given me.
I'd say you've done a lot more than
But
a lot of people to grow Volvo awareness,
yeah, I mean, I guess I could say that
fostered a
I've
community.
helped contribute to modern Volvos being cool in a way. Not a lot, but in a way that it's people know about them a little bit more now. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the Volvo tuners are kind of going by the wayside. Contrast was a guy named Gustav. He's, I guess, gone. I haven't heard and hide nor hair from him in a while. Steve-O is the guy that tuned my V70R when it got built through Ben up at Rolling Motors in Connecticut. And basically, what you got left is Hilton and IPD. IPD being a very well-known company out west. They supply lots of Volvo parts, and Hilton Tuning being a very well-known tuner in the Volvo community, but also does other stuff. They do Audis and Jags and stuff like that too. So it's not just Volvo for Hilton, but they're most well known for Volvo, from what I would say. It's interesting as Volvo tuner or Volvo as a community is sort of losing sort of that homebrew, if you will, the way that Subaru, you can kind of get a lot of people in the Subaru forums that can open source tune, which is very cool. You cannot do that a lot in the Volvo community. There aren't people that really do it that much. I'm in a private Volvo chat with a couple of people that have been trying to crack a lot of it, but the biggest problem there is that a lot of the software is Hilton's, and when he finds that out, or at least it was derived from Hilton. When he finds that out, there's going to be some pretty big lawsuits, I would imagine. The other side of that is we as a enthusiast community that is outside of Volvo are constantly getting berated by the government on tuning and stuff. You've already seen it in California. The government's also going to start to crack down on things. They are taking stock Hyundai N's, so the Veloster N, the Elantra N, and in California, and they're saying that you cannot have it in race mode. You have to bring it to the dealer for them to remove race mode. That's just the local government not knowing what the hell they're talking about. Legislature is against automotive enthusiasm in a lot of ways, and it's interesting to see all of this drama that's surrounding the Volvo community from a tuning perspective when we should all sort of be binding together because we're losing out on a lot of that like fun cohesion that makes tuning cars and modding cars part of automotive enthusiasm as a whole. So I don't know. It's very interesting to see. There's drama around a guy S60RR, which is I guess another tuner. I think it was I don't know the person, but I think he was supposed to be tuning for people and then like ran away. I'm not entirely sure, but I can guarantee you that someone will crack the code and start to create homebrew tunes. The one thing I will say is that I will caution against going with those people based on price, because the last thing you want is to have someone homebrew tuning your car and your car explodes. A great example of that is ARD tuning, which obviously is not around anymore in the Volvo community, and they started as a homebrew tune and started to do their own stuff, and they basically just blew up a ton of Volvos because they thought their tune was fine, and it wasn't. Quite frankly, I would much rather get an IPD or Hilton tune and just continue logging with them and giving them the data than I would a homebrew tuner just to save a couple $100. It's my car at the end of the day, and I would much rather spend the extra couple $100 to have that peace of mind. So with that being said, it's very interesting to see what's going on in the Volvo community right now with that. But I don't think it's going to end anytime soon because Volvo's not a huge community for tuning. It just isn't. There's maybe tens of thousands of people that want Volvo tunes, which sounds like a lot, but it's not compared to the Subaru community or the Honda community, where there's millions of people that need tunes. It's a very niche market that likely won't have a mass market solution to it. I would love to see another tuner come out of it, but I don't think that you're going to see really anything come out of it anytime soon. If you want to tune your own car, that's fine because then it's sort of like in your own hands. And if you learn tuning and do things yourself, cool, that's great. But I wouldn't trust another homebrew tuner in that respect. I would much rather just go to Hilton or IPD and say, hey, here's the deal. There's no real solution for this. Can you help? And if that's the case, then I would maybe go with them because they're a shop that literally just lives on tuning. And if they can do it and they have a dyno, then they can actually like really sort of dial in your car live on the fly as opposed to just sending out logs and trying to figure it out remotely, right? That's what sort of makes me want to go do a build the same way Chad is with the guys at Blue Sky, or go to the place that I've been to dyno a bunch of times, Prime Motoring, and do like a Subaru build with those guys, because you can get like live feeds and live data logging and live knowledge from people that really know what they're talking about and what they're doing. So that really interests me a lot. Like one of my dream cars right now is, if we make enough money through shifting things, I'd love to buy a Jaguar F-Type R. And it sounds like a lot of money, but sort of the older ones, like 2015, 16, 17, you can get them for between $40,000 to $55,000, $60,000, depending on what it is. But that's a platform that really doesn't have a ton of tuning to it. You have Velocity Access Performance, or VAP, essentially what it is. They do a lot of tuning for Aston Martin, Jags, and things like that. They have a setup for the Jag F-Type R that now has tunes as well as upgraded internals, smaller pulley, things like that. And but again, it would be like sort of sending it out to a outside source, if you will. Whereas if I were to end up being in the position where I could spend that kind of money, which would be amazing, and in that same ballpark is the C6 Z06 Corvette, which then I could bring to Blue Sky the way Chad is doing with his Mustang and be able to do it live. So it's sort of a give and take, and it's the same thing in the Volvo community. Can you find a shop that really wants to work with you that can, or do you trust Hilton and IPD to sort of send out your tunes and logs and stuff like that to make your car better, or do you want to homebrew yourself? It's just a very interesting scenario, and there's a lot of different options you have in that sense. And Subaru is a great example. You can have tuners like Prime Motoring in Wallington here in New Jersey that are incredibly well respected. You have also Cobb, which gives you the access port, which you can just plug in and like flash a tune right then and there. Or you can do people that do open source tuning from the forums. So it's a very interesting whole scenario out there with all sorts of different tuning. But Volvo is in a position right now where I think tuning is really is starting to kind of die off within the community.
Which sucks.
It does suck.
A couple things. One, the Mustang is kind of a just live version of kind of what you've done with like Hilton. It's just that you literally pay for someone to be on the other line, on the other side of the phone for 3 hours while you send data logs back and forth. But Jeff at Blue Sky is very fluent, and he would be able to do the tune himself if he could get access to the Ford software, which he can't. And that kind of piggybacks to Doug's question, which is, why is it so hard to write software for something that is in reality a mechanical carb, or what a mechanical carb is able to accomplish? I mean, sure, fuel injection is more precise, but if you just want to start something that works, it seemed like it wouldn't be hard with added data to improve. But then again, I'm quite ignorant to it. So I can't speak to Volvo, but most of the time, if you're going to have some variation of software that can access a car's ECU, you're going to need basically manufacturer support in a lot of ways, or have someone who's already cracked the code. I'll give you a couple examples of this. The Lexus IS 300. You do anything to that car that isn't really just bolt-ons, tune. You can't tune it because there is no access. People have been trying for those Toyota computers for decades. Because imagine being able to add boost or manage boost or do all this stuff with like even like a Mark IV Supra. like you can with the Subaru, like you can with a lot of these other cars. You can't even access the computer itself. People have tried, they haven't been able to do it. So the manufacturers are actively trying to keep people out of it for good reason. So like I said, Jeff just does not have access to Ford's computer. It's more like Lund got support from Ford. VMP got support from Ford. So if they're confused about something, they can go to literally the source and get something on it. I mean, we touched on Ford not doing this, Ford going this route hardcore. So if you can get into a Ford ECU, you just might not speak Ford. Just because you can tune on a Motec doesn't mean you're going to be immediately able to tune on a Haltech. They're similar, but they speak a slightly different language. How hard would it be to write software for that, Doug? Extremely, because you have to translate into something that a tuner can look at and then adjust the parameters required. It seems like a simple spark plug turn on 2 milliseconds earlier, 2 milliseconds later, whatever. But there's just so much that goes involved into a modern car, and what goes into a modern ECU is ridiculous. And the fact that you don't have access to it in a lot of cases is what makes it tricky. And then, like, in the Volvo side of things, I mean, there's a reason why Hilton wants to go after everyone, right? If you use their software, they worked hard. They probably paid a ton of money to develop that software. They don't want Joe Blow just grabbing it and going and becoming essentially competition. Not essentially, they will become competition. The lack of someone who can sit here and do a dyno tune on a Volvo is pretty sad. It's really sad because Volvos are not just safe wagons. We all know, right? They're not just safe items for ferrying kids to school, going to work. Just like that. They're actually, the older Volvos are enthusiastic cars. And it'd be a shame to almost not have an option to get what you want just because the enthusiasm for it is going away. But like Greg said, it's such a small group that it would almost have to be like someone passing the torch, which is, again, it's a bummer for Volvo. I guess that just means Greg's going to have to put a Toyota V12 in one of his.
Yes, I'm cool with it.
But here's the thing. All is not lost. So, yes, not being able to tune your own ECU sucks, but standalones are getting more affordable by the day. What was a $2,000 ECU Elite 2500 has come down in price. Motecs are coming down in price for the older versions of it. And let's face it, unless you're running a modern engine with modern sensors, you don't need a crazy expensive ECU. I understand that's
right.
$700-800 or sometimes $1,000+. Or if you want a Motec for the Mustang, it's $6,000.
No thanks.
Yes, thanks, because of what it can provide. But I'll get to that in a minute.
Well, yeah.
And then you have to pay for tuning. But then anyone who knows Haltech can tune the car. You know what I mean? You don't have to wait for the next Stevo. You don't have to wait for someone else. Having that means you could go to a guy like Jeff. And he might not know Volvo, but he knows a Haltech fuel table. He knows a Haltech ignition table. A smart tuner knows with this compression, with this boost, knock is inevitable at this ignition timing. Or this sort of stuff. So the upshot to spending a little bit more is the fact that if they are a Haltech certified, and I'm just using Haltech because it's all over the joint right now. If it's a Haltech certified tuner, they can tune it. They don't have to be specific to the Volvo community. And Hunter, yes, we should 1G swap the world.
Hell yeah.